Welcome back to Sassy Scoop TV. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're taking on two of the world's most epic tales.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is. We're talking the Odyssey and the Ramayana. I'm Alex,
And I'm Casey.
and we are ready to unpack some seriously epic literature.
These stories have captivated audiences for centuries, and for good reason. There's so much there.
Right. I mean, who doesn't love a good adventure story?
Yeah.
You've got heroes and monsters and even a few gods thrown in for good measure.
Yeah.
But what I find really fascinating,
What's that?
well, it's how these two stories, for totally different times and places, they actually kind of echo each other.
It's true. On the surface, you've got Odysseus. He's a Greek king, and he's battling all these crazy creatures trying to get home after the Trojan War. Then you've got Rama, an Indian prince, the picture of virtue, and he's facing down a demon king to rescue his wife.
Different settings, different challenges.
Absolutely.
But when you look closer,
You start to see all these universal themes: heroism, duty, good versus evil, that kind of thing. It's like they're tapping into something, I don't know.
fundamental, about what it means to be human.
Exactly. So let's start with the heroes themselves.
Okay.
What makes Odysseus and Rama so compelling? How do they embody heroism in their respective epics?
Okay, so Odysseus, right? He's not your typical hero. He's not all about brute strength. He's more the brains over brawn type. Like when he encounters the Cyclops Polyphemus.
A good example.
He doesn't try to overpower him, right?
Yeah.
Instead, he gets the Cyclops drunk, blinds him with a burning stake, and then he makes his escape by clinging to the underbelly of a ram. Talk about clever.
Oh, absolutely. It shows how resourceful he is. He's a strategic thinker, that Odysseus, always adapting to the situation, finding a way to outsmart his opponents. It's a different kind of heroism.
Definitely.
But no less impressive.
Totally. And it's not just physical challenges either.
Right.
Remember Calypso?
Yeah.
The nymph who offered him immortality if he stayed with her on her island. That's some serious temptation.
Oh, for sure.
But he chooses to go back to his wife and kingdom, even though it means more hardship, more uncertainty.
Yeah, that really shows his commitment to family and his sense of duty.
Yeah.
He's not just driven by ambition or anything like that. He's anchored by his love for Penelope and longing for home.
It's a very human side to him.
It is.
It makes you root for him, even when he makes,
Questionable choices.
a few of those along the way.
Definitely.
Now, Rama, he's kind of a different breed of hero, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Rama, he's the embodiment of dharma, righteous conduct, unwavering commitment to duty. His whole heroism is rooted in this strong moral compass. He is a skilled warrior, a fantastic archer, no doubt. But it's his unwavering commitment to doing the right thing that truly defines him as a hero.
So kind of a lawful good type of hero?
You could say that.
But wouldn't that make him a little inflexible? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't that limit his options sometimes?
It's a valid question. Yeah, his adherence to dharma, it can put him in some tough spots, no doubt about that. But this unwavering commitment to what's right, it's also his biggest strength.
Right.
It inspires everyone around him, and ultimately that's what allows him to win against some pretty impossible odds.
Okay, so we've got the brilliant strategist, Odysseus,
Yes.
and Rama, the unwavering moral compass,
Right.
both heroic but in very different ways.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder how those different approaches play out in the challenges they face.
Right. They both go through intense trials. Each one tests their strengths, their values. It really tests their own definitions of heroism. Take Odysseus, for example. He has to face the sirens, those creatures whose songs lure sailors to their doom. And it's not just about physical strength either, is it?
No, it's this test of willpower, of self-control.
Exactly.
He literally has to tie himself to the mast of his ship to resist their song. You can really feel that inner struggle he's going through.
That conflict makes him so relatable, I think. He's not perfect. He's got weaknesses, makes mistakes, but he keeps going, even when it's hard, even when it's really, really hard.
What about Rama then? What are some of the trials that he has to go through?
Well, try being exiled in the forest for 14 years.
Oh, wow.
That's what Rama endures, along with his wife, Sita, and his brother, Lakshmana. It's a test of patience, of resilience, of holding on to his dharma even when it feels like the whole universe is against him.
14 years. Wow, that makes Odysseus' 10-year journey look like, I don't know.
Like a vacation.
Yeah, a walk in the park. It's a completely different kind of hardship. But it really shows you something about Rama's character, doesn't it?
It does. He never wavers in his duty. Even with all that adversity, there's even this beautiful story from his exile. It involves this woman, Shibari, who's a very devout ascetic, and she offers him berries, but she's tasted them all first to make sure they're sweet.
Wow.
It's a small act of kindness, but it really highlights Rama's humility, his respect for everyone, no matter who they are.
That's a powerful image. It shows his heroism isn't just about strength or power, but about kindness and compassion, too. So here we have these two heroes, right, facing incredible challenges, but it seems like they have very different motivations, different values driving them. Can we dig into that a bit more?
We can. Odysseus, as we've said, he embodies this kind of Greek individualism, doesn't he? He's resourceful, cunning. He puts the well-being of himself and his crew first. And it's a world where the gods, they're not exactly reliable, are they?
Right.
And survival often depends on being smarter, being trickier than everyone else, human or divine.
It's almost like an every man for himself kind of mentality.
Right.
Which makes sense, right? Considering all the chaos he's dealing with. But doesn't that clash with, his love for Penelope and his longing for home?
It's a paradox for sure. He's driven by ambition, but also deep loyalty. And his whole journey is about trying to find that balance between those two forces.
Yeah.
Now, you contrast that with Rama. He represents a completely different worldview. He's guided by those principles of Indian dharma.
So not so much every man for himself, but more duty above all else.
Exactly. He's all about fulfilling his role, upholding the cosmic order,
Right.
making sure everything is in balance, acting in accordance with righteousness. His choices, they're driven by a sense of responsibility to his kingdom, his family, even to the universe itself. It's a big responsibility.
Okay, so Odysseus is the individualistic survivor.
Right.
And Rama, the duty-bound upholder of cosmic order.
Yes.
Two very different approaches to heroism. And it seems like those differences also apply to, well, how the gods get involved in their stories.
You're right. The way the gods interact with Odysseus and Rama, it really reveals a lot about how these epics see the world.
Okay, so tell me about this divine intervention. What's it like in these stories?
Well, for Odysseus, he gets help from Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, throughout his whole journey. But even her favor, he earns it through his own cleverness, his own strategic thinking.
So it's not just given to him.
Not really, no. The Greek gods, they can be a bit fickle. You never know where you stand with them. Their help always comes with a condition.
It's like they're constantly testing him, even when they're helping him out.
Right.
He never knows if he's truly earned their favor.
Exactly. And it makes his victories all the more impressive, right?
Definitely. So what about Rama? What kind of divine help does he get?
Rama's relationship with the divine is a bit different. He gets help from Hanuman. He's the monkey god, and he has a whole army. Hanuman's devotion to Rama is total. His intervention, it really highlights the power of faith and selfless service in overcoming evil. It's just a very different dynamic between mortals and the divine.
So in the Ramayana, divine help is a bit more readily available,
I guess you could say that.
but only to those who deserve it.
Right. Through their piety and by upholding dharma.
Okay, so it's like two flavors of divine intervention, right?
Exactly.
Both reflecting how their cultures understand the relationship between gods and humans. And doesn't that difference in perspective extend to, like, the way the stories are told?
Yeah.
And the moral questions they ask?
It absolutely does. Even the way the Odyssey and Ramayana are written, they feel very different, don't they?
They do.
The Odyssey is all about adventure, It's episodic, like a series of interconnected stories, each with their own monsters and challenges to overcome.
It's like a TV show where there's a new monster every week.
Yeah. It keeps you guessing. Always something new popping up in Odysseus' path. And it lets us see his thoughts, his struggles. He's flawed, but he's so relatable.
I like that. It's not always predictable.
Oh. Now the Ramayana, it unfolds on a much grander scale.
Right. It feels epic. It's got these elaborate descriptions and beautiful language. Like every detail has meaning, and there are profound moral lessons woven throughout.
Exactly. The focus is on upholding dharma, establishing that cosmic order, and showcasing Rama as the ideal man, It's a story that makes you feel awe. Yeah. It elevates Rama to almost legendary status.
Okay, so we have the fast-paced, adventurous Odyssey.
Yes.
Versus the grand, morally driven Ramayana.
That's a good way to put it.
It's amazing how each story reflects its own culture's ideas about heroes and the world.
It is. And you know what? That difference, it also shows up in the roles of Penelope and Sita. The women in these epics, they're important.
Yes, they're more than just damsels in distress.
Right? Absolutely not. Penelope, Odysseus' wife, she's praised for her cleverness, her loyalty, how strong she is in the face of adversity. Imagine a house full of suitors trying to take over. She has to fend them off while she's waiting for Odysseus to come home. She cleverly delays remarrying, and she protects his kingdom.
She's like the ultimate multitasker.
Yeah.
Holding down the fort, literally. Where she's not just waiting around, she's using her brains to protect her family and her home.
Exactly. Now, Sita, Rama's wife, she embodies a different kind of strength. She's known for her purity, her devotion, her unwavering loyalty to her husband. She goes through hardship and captivity with grace and dignity, never losing faith in Rama, even when he doubts her.
So she's the picture of faithfulness and resilience. But wait, wasn't there a whole thing about Rama making her go through a trial by fire to prove she's pure? That's kind of controversial, isn't it?
It is, and people still debate it today. It raises a lot of difficult questions about gender roles, what society expects of women, and the nature of trust and love. Even heroes can be flawed, and their actions don't always look so good through a modern lens.
Yeah, it makes you think about how these stories, while they're ancient, they still challenge us to look at our own beliefs and assumptions and how to handle those timeless ethical dilemmas.
Exactly. They're living narratives. They spark debate, make you think. They give us so much insight into human nature. They're not just relics of the past.
So we have these two amazing heroes, incredible characters, epic battles, and so many timeless lessons about love, loyalty, and just the power of the human spirit.
Absolutely. They stay with you long after you finish reading them.
Oh.
It's amazing how these ancient epics still resonate, isn't it?
They really do. We've talked about the heroes, their challenges, their values. But every hero needs a villain, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what's a good story without a worthy opponent?
Right. Those villains, they push the hero to their limits. And in the Odyssey and the Ramayana,
They've got some great ones.
they do. And they represent more than just like obstacles to overcome.
Oh, for sure. They embody temptations, fears, societal problems, things the hero has to face head on.
Okay, so let's start with the Odyssey.
Great.
You've got the Cyclops, Polyphemus, the sorceress Circe, the Sirens. Pretty iconic figures in Western literature.
Yeah.
But what do they symbolize? Beyond just being monsters, you know?
Well, take Polyphemus, for example. He's all brute force and savagery. This giant one-eyed monster eating Odysseus's men without a second thought. Odysseus can't beat him with strength alone. He needs to be clever, use strategy.
It's like that classic battle of brains versus brawn.
Exactly. He can't just overpower the Cyclops. He has to outsmart him. And that's really a defining characteristic of Odysseus, isn't it?
Totally.
He adapts, he's resourceful, always thinking ahead. Now, Circe and the Sirens, they represent something else. Temptation.
Ooh, yeah.
Circe with her potions turning men into animals, and the Sirens luring sailors to their deaths with their beautiful song. Odysseus has to resist all that. Pleasure, comfort, even the promise of immortality, to stay on his path, to get home.
It really makes you think about those things in life that try to pull you off course, you know?
Yeah.
Those distractions and temptations, they seem appealing in the moment, but they can lead you away from what really matters.
That's a really great point. These stories, they're full of these symbolic challenges, aren't they?
They are.
And they resonate with us even today. But it's not just individual temptations either, is it?
No.
It's also about confronting these bigger societal issues.
Okay, how so? How do these stories deal with that?
Think about those suitors trying to take over Odysseus's kingdom while he's gone.
Oh, yeah. Trying to force Penelope to marry one of them.
Exactly. They represent greed, disrespect, a complete breakdown of order. Odysseus coming back and defeating them. It's not just about him getting his home back.
Right.
It's about restoring justice, bringing back balance to his kingdom.
It's a mini version of those larger battles, right? Against corruption, injustice. You see it throughout history.
Absolutely. Odysseus, he's not just battling monsters. He's fighting very human flaws, very human weaknesses.
That makes him even more relatable. So it's not just mythical creatures. It's these moral and societal problems, too.
Right. And that's what makes these stories so timeless, I think. They
Yeah.
tap into these struggles that everyone faces, no matter what culture, what time period. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the Ramayana for a minute. And its main villain, Ravana.
Oh, yes. The 10-headed demon king.
He's a powerful one. He embodies that desire for power, ego, lust. He's driven by his passions, disrupting everything, threatening society itself. And with his 10 heads,
Oh, yeah. Those were the 10 heads anyway.
they symbolize his intellect, his power. He's a formidable enemy. He's not just some mindless monster.
Right. He's got brains, too, and motivation.
Exactly. And it makes his conflict with Rama even more interesting, don't you think?
For sure. But you mentioned earlier that villains often represent something bigger, right? Some societal problem. What would Ravana symbolize in that sense?
Great question. He can be seen as representing unchecked ambition, the dangers of power. He's a cautionary tale, really, showing us how important humility is, self-control, staying true to dharma. When Rama defeats him, it's about restoring balance, good triumphing over evil. That classic battle,
Right. But it's not so black and white. There's all that inner struggle too, right?
Absolutely. We all have that capacity for both good and evil inside us. It's our choices that matter. Speaking of choices, let's talk about how these stories are told, their narrative styles.
Okay. Because they both tell epic tales, but they feel so different.
They do. The Odyssey has that episodic structure, like we talked about earlier. Each adventure is connected, building on the last, new monsters, new challenges.
It's like a road trip, but with mythology.
Right. You never know what's around the corner, keeps you on your toes. And it lets Homer, the author, really show us Odysseus's character, his
Right.
cunning, his ability to escape, resist temptation, and finally, revealing who he truly is and taking back what's his. It's a journey of self-discovery as much as a physical one.
He's growing, learning, becoming a better leader along the way.
He is. So how does the Ramayana compare? How is its style different?
Well, it feels more deliberate, doesn't it? More grand, more descriptive. The language is beautiful, and the focus is on Rama being this perfect example of virtue and dharma.
You're right. It's meant to be savored. Like you're unraveling a rich tapestry full of symbolism and moral lessons.
It's like the difference between an action movie and an opera. They both entertain, but they do it in different ways. One is all about the thrill, the other is about those deep emotions and themes.
That's a great analogy, and it reflects the different cultures behind them, right? The Odyssey, with its focus on individual heroism, resourcefulness, and how to deal with those unpredictable gods. It's very much a reflection of ancient Greek culture.
It makes Odysseus a very relatable hero. Just a guy trying to get home in a world that seems against him. He's flawed, but resilient. We get him.
We do. And that realism, despite the fantastical elements, that's what makes it so powerful. The Ramayana, on the other hand, it's grounded in that ancient Indian worldview. Dharma, righteousness, fulfilling your duty.
It's less about personal ambition and more about the greater good.
Exactly. Rama is the role model. He shows us how to live a virtuous life, how to navigate all those complexities and stay true to what's right.
Okay, so we have these two contrasting worldviews. It's reflected in the heroes, the villains, the storytelling, but let's not forget the women, right? Penelope and Sita.
Absolutely not. They're more than just supporting players. They're complex, strong characters with their own journeys.
Penelope, with her intelligence and loyalty. She doesn't just sit around waiting. She manages the household, raises her son, keeps those suitors at bay.
She's incredible, defying all those expectations of what a wife should be. She's active, she's intelligent, she's strong, and her strength contrasts beautifully with Odysseus's cleverness. They complete each other, representing different sides of leadership and resilience.
It's like they're two halves of a whole. Both are needed to overcome life's challenges. Now, Sita, she's often described as pure and devoted. But her story is much more complicated than that, isn't it?
It is. She goes through so much. Exile, being kidnapped, even that trial by fire.
Which, like we said before, is a really tough thing to look at from a modern perspective.
It is. And it forces us to confront those difficult questions about gender, societal pressures, and the limits of love and duty.
Even in the story about righteousness and virtue, these issues are still present.
They are. And it shows how these ancient stories, they reflect their times, but they also challenge us to look at them with a modern perspective.
Yeah, the conversation continues, even thousands of years later.
It does. And that's the beauty of these epics. They make us think, they challenge our assumptions, they start discussions, and they give us so much insight into human nature. They're more than just stories. They're a reflection of ourselves and the world we live in.
And they remind us that even heroes and heroines are flawed. They make mistakes, face difficult choices, but it's their resilience, their commitment to their values that allows them to succeed. It's inspiring.
It really is. These stories offer so much wisdom and inspiration. They can help us navigate life's complexities and become the best versions of ourselves.
But I'm thinking about the impact these stories have had. I mean, they've been around for so long.
Centuries.
They must have really shaped culture and art.
Oh, absolutely. The Odyssey and the Ramayana, they're more than just stories, They're woven into the fabric of our culture. They've inspired everything, from literature and art to music, dance, even how we think about leadership and morality.
Okay, so what kind of impact are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
Well, let's take the Odyssey first. Think about that image of Odysseus, tied to the mast of his ship, resisting the sirens.
Oh, yeah.
Such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? resisting temptation, staying focused on your goals.
I see that image everywhere. Paintings, sculptures, even tattoos.
Right. It's like a symbol for willpower.
It is.
And that's just one example of how much the Odyssey has influenced Western art and culture. You've got James Joyce's Ulysses. It's a whole modernist masterpiece based on the Odyssey set in Dublin.
Wow.
And Tennyson's poem, Ulysses.
Oh, yeah?
It captures that yearning for adventure, even in old age. These stories, they give us a way to explore what it means to be human. They can be adapted to any time, any place.
They're like a bottomless well of inspiration, aren't they?
They are. And it's amazing to think, did Homer ever imagine how much of an impact his stories would have? It really speaks to the power of stories and how universal those themes in the Odyssey are. Now let's jump over to the Ramayana. Its influence on South and Southeast Asian culture is huge.
It's true. It's not just a story there. It's part of religion and tradition.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen those performances? The costumes, the music, the dancing, it's like the whole story comes alive.
Oh, yeah. Those Ramayana ballets and dance dramas, they're incredible.
They're spectacular with elaborate costumes, incredible choreography, traditional music, and there are so many different versions throughout Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, India, each one with its own cultural twist.
It's amazing how one story can be told in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Through so many different forms of art. But what about like paintings, sculptures? Has the Ramayana influenced those too?
Oh, definitely. You see scenes from the Ramayana everywhere, on temple walls and miniature paintings, even in modern art. And the story itself, it's been retold in countless ways. Literature, poems, songs, movies, even TV shows.
Wow, it really is a shared language, connecting people through a common story.
It is. And that shared story also has shared values. Duty, righteousness, the triumph of good over evil. It's not just entertaining, it's a guide for how to live.
It's amazing how these stories still have so much power to shape how we see the world. We've talked about art and culture, but what about leadership, ethics? Have these epics influenced how we think about those things too?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's a big part of why they're still so relevant today. Take Odysseus. With his cunning, his pragmatism, he's like a model for leadership in a way. He shows us how to be adaptable, how to think strategically, how to deal with difficult situations.
He's the ultimate problem solver, always a step ahead. But he also forces us to think about the ethics of leadership, right? Some of his choices are kind of morally gray. Makes you wonder, how far would you go to survive, to achieve your goals?
Exactly. And the Odyssey doesn't shy away from that. Odysseus, he's a flawed hero. He makes tough decisions, sometimes for the greater good, sometimes just to save himself. And it makes us, the audience, think about those choices. What would we do? What are the consequences?
It's like an ethics lesson wrapped in an epic adventure story.
It is. Now, Rama, he offers a different model of leadership.
Right, because he's all about dharma and doing the right thing.
Exactly. He's about integrity, being someone people can trust. He inspires loyalty, not through force, but by living those values. So we've got the strategist, Odysseus.
And the moral compass, Rama.
Yes. Two different approaches. Both have their own strengths and weaknesses. And the fact that we're still talking about these characters, these dilemmas, after thousands of years.
It shows how timeless they really are.
It does. They offer valuable lessons about leadership, about making tough ethical decisions, about staying true to yourself, even when things are hard. They're like these ancient guides for navigating life, you know?
Totally. And the best part?
What's that?
They're just as relevant today as they were all those centuries ago. I love that.
That's the magic of storytelling, isn't it?
It is. It connects us across time and cultures. We learn from the past, we grapple with the present, and we dream of a better future.
The Odyssey and the Ramayana, they're more than just stories. They're reflections of us, our hopes, our fears, our struggles, everything.
And they remind us that we're all part of this larger story, and we get to write the next chapter.
Beautifully said.
Well, that brings our epic deep dive to a close. We've explored the heroes, the villains, those amazing narrative techniques, the tough ethical questions, and the enduring legacy of these timeless tales. I hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on Sassy Scoop TV for more deep dives into the world of literature, history, and culture. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.